Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining us on the program People, Politics, and Power. I am Imonia Marire. For years, Africa's security concerns have been defined by armed conflicts, insurgencies, and military threats. But in 2025, insecurity wears many faces, from violent extremism and political instability to food shortages, climate change, cybercrime, and mass displacement, far beyond the battlefields. Redefining Africa's security framework means asking hard questions. Is security all about protecting borders, or is it also about protecting people? Can nations be truly secure if citizens live in poverty, without jobs, justice, or trust in their leaders? Across the continent, it's becoming clear that security is not just the absence of war, but the presence of peace, stability, and opportunities. The challenge before Africa is to move from a narrow state-centered view of security to one that puts people at the center, and to build regional cooperation that responds not only to the guns of today, but also to the silent threats of tomorrow. This was the focus of the inaugural summit of the African Defense Chiefs, which held in Abuja during the week, aimed at combating contemporary threats to regional peace and security. Now, the United Nations, through its Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, says Africa has become the epicenter of global terrorism, accounting for 59% of all terrorism-related deaths worldwide, and soaring past 6,000 in the last 3 years alone. According to Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, Africa faces more than 1,000 terror-related groups operating across porous borders, exploiting weak governance and feeding on local grievances. Now, rising from this major threat to regional stability and development, ECOWAS has announced a plan to establish and deploy a 260,000-man rapid counter-terrorism force to combat violent extremism in the region. It will, however, require an annual budget of $2.5 billion to fund this initiative. On the program today, we take a closer look at how Africa can redefine its security framework in a way that secures both nations and the people who live in them. Well, for a starter, let us listen to some of those who spoke at the Chiefs of Defense Summit, which was hosted here in the nation's capital, Abuja, just a few days ago.
This is the moment to reassess our military objectives in the collective aspirations to make Africa safe. It is time to forge a new doctrine of continental defense, one rooted in trust, shared intelligence, and coordinated strategy. Nigeria's promise has always been simple and firm: to be a good neighbor and a brother's keeper in the struggle for peace. Our armed forces have stood shoulder to shoulder with our neighbors and far beyond in peacekeeping missions, counter-terrorism operations, and humanitarian endeavors. We hold no illusion. Security is the foundation upon which the edifice of progress must stand. That is why we must use this summit not merely as a meeting, but as a covenant to deepen cooperation through joint training, harmonized doctrines, and interoperable systems. For this to endure, we must build a framework where our defense institutions speak with one voice and act with one purpose. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the nature of warfare has evolved. The threats of today are asymmetric, digital, and often invisible. Our response must not be less dynamic. We must invest in cyber defense, artificial intelligence, and indigenous military innovation. Africa cannot remain merely a consumer of technology. We must be creators, innovators, and owners of the tools that secure our tomorrow. I therefore urge this summit to explore avenues for defense industrial cooperation, collaboration, research partnerships, and African-led solutions to African security challenges.
Africa stands on the edge of unprecedented opportunity, driven by a vibrant youth population, vast resources, and a spirit of innovation. Yet, this promise is challenged by a complex and evolving spectrum of security threats. From the scourge of violent extremism and terrorism to the menace of transnational organized crime, piracy, and the insidious impacts of climate change on conflict, these challenges recognize no borders. They are hydra-headed, resilient, and demand a response that is equally dynamic, unified, and strategic. The choice of the theme of this summit, combating contemporary threats to regional peace and security in Africa, the role of defense collaboration, is both timely and pertinent. It captures the urgent need for united action in addressing the complex and evolving security challenges confronting our continent. Consequently, this gathering offers us a rare opportunity to forge a unified front. It is a platform to harmonize our doctrines, strengthen interoperability, and build enduring trust among our defense institutions. We must therefore seize this opportunity to craft a new architecture of African-led security cooperation.
With the interlocking and mutually destructive nature of terrorism and organized crime for the entire region, ECOWAS continues to encourage collaboration on security matters with our brothers and sisters of the Alliance of the Sahelian States, despite probably lingering political differences. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ECOWAS is acutely aware of the threat of renewed geostrategic and geopolitical processes unfolding in West Africa and beyond that threaten renewed proxy wars akin to the Cold War era, due in part to the acute insecurity facing the continent, and it is determined to avert this scenario. A first step in this direction is our efforts to scale up counter-terrorism efforts. On the directive of the ECOWAS heads of state and government, the organization is in the process of activating a 260,000 rapid deployment counter-terrorism brigade and to provide logistic and financial support to frontline states facing terrorism. While ECOWAS remains firmly committed to raising its 5,000-man brigade under the auspices of the African Peace and Security Architecture, and more particularly the Continental Standby Force, the activation of this rapid deployment force has become a necessity given the asymmetric security dynamics in the region.
We know that Africa is at the epicenter of global terrorism deaths, and today Professor Gambari has told us just how many of those insurgency groups are on the continent. Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State affiliates coordinate across our continent, and the attacks in West Africa coastal countries surging 250% in 2 years. Violent extremism, once thought to be history, is back again in the Lake Chad Basin and in Somalia and beyond. By last year's end, over 14,000 schools were closed in the Central Sahel due to the conflict. Aside from the children who are forcibly recruited, we see young people who are drawn by fear, by money, by a false promise of belonging. And when young people see no path to education or to justice and a future, extremist propaganda finds an audience, and we risk losing an entire generation. In this new era of technology, where it should be advancing as a human endeavor, these groups are using new technologies like unmanned aerial systems and improvised explosive devices to wreak havoc. We cannot afford to be bystanders, Africa must take ownership, must be proactive, and shape how these tools will be used.
Africa must take ownership of its security systems. How does it do that? Those are the issues we'll be looking at on the program today, and I'm joined now by retired Colonel Leo Abara. Retired Colonel Abara is a security consultant, and he is the CEO of Lavent Security. Thank you so much for joining us, Colonel Leo Abara.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope you're hearing me loud and clear.
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much. Also joining us is Dr. Ferdinand Ikwang. Dr. Ikwang is a counter-terrorism specialist, a former national coordinator, de-radicalization project, and director of Horizon Edge. Dr. Ikwang, thank you so much for finding time to join us.
Thank you.
All right, we also expect to join us very shortly by Janice Haruna John. She is the MD Speech Security and Vice Chairman of the Association of Licensed Private Security Practitioners of Nigeria in the FCT. She will be joining us here in the studio. So, Colonel Abara, let's begin this way. You have listened to the Nigeria's Vice President, who represented the President at that summit. You have listened to the Chief of Defense Staff, and of course, the ECOWAS representative at that summit, as well as the Deputy General Secretary of the United Nations, all of whom were at that summit, and they all seem to agree that Africa's security challenges are very, very challenging. Now, so the question to begin with is, how complex are Africa's security challenges? Let's put that in perspective.
Yeah, Africa's security challenges have become more complex by the day. And the continental security architecture was not designed to handle the kind of security challenges we are having today. You remember we have conventional militaries, and all the militaries that have that came for this conference, none of them have defeated terrorism. That shows you that there is a new form of warfare that they didn't prepare for. They are not equipped for. And I'm happy that the United Nations, African governments are concerned now, and they're beginning to realize that they cannot do it. That what they have that protects their nation cannot face the current challenges. And it is a good, meeting, a starting point, at least to realize that, yes, we cannot do it. There's a need to have a new architecture. And we have been speaking about a new architecture, judging by in the continent. And for us to have up to 1,000 violent non-state actors operating in Africa is a failure of governance. It shows that our leaders do not have strategic training. And that is one of the concerns we have. We have leaders that are not groomed, that are not strategically trained to know that in 10 years' time, in 5 years' time, or misgovernance will give rise to some of these things. And it's equally an indictment on the intelligence community. For you to be there for more than 10 years, we are having ungoverned spaces. We're having up to 1,000 violent non-state actors operating in different parts of Africa, occupying space. I'm happy that the African governments have realized today that they are not performing well, and the need for us to move forward. So we are going to really recalibrate and have a new security architecture that can face the threats. Otherwise, we will be in trouble.
Dr. Ikwang, from records that have been put out by the AU itself, in 2024 alone, there were well over 3,400 terrorist attacks, recorded across Africa. That, of course, suggests that in many countries across the continent, there is one or two violent non-state actors that are active and causing a lot of mayhem. In addition to these terrorist groups, we now have issues of cyber crime, cyber terrorism, and what have you. Now, this summit that just took place in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, seeks to combat some of these extremist violent attacks and crises across the African continent. Do you think that Africa and African leaders are doing enough? Are they just leaving the job or indeed the responsibility to the military and indeed other security agencies alone to tackle?
Thank you for that question. I think, as a sum, it is the responsibility of the military to deal with these kinds of threats. The rest of the agencies will have to support the military to do its job and do it well. I would say the best thing that happens to any organized military is adaptability. As things change, as things evolve, you move in that particular direction. And endeavor, in this case, to be ahead of the curve, not to be reactive, as the case may be. So I think this summit is very timely. The approach, as it comes out, I'm sure they will go back and redefine some of the things that have been suggested out there and put it out there and come up with a real engagement plan. But for now, to answer your question, I think the job is still that of the military. I'm not one to sit down and say it should have been done like this. The way I was trained is that you go ahead and do it. You just do it. So for now, to rejig the architecture, redesign it, and re-engage would be the way forward.
So the next logical question to ask Dr. Ikwang is, what are those elements, what are those basic things that will be required to be plugged in redefining a security framework for Africa?
I think the first step, the entry point for me would have been to set up a joint task force that would do this job. First of all, a platform where everybody can plug into. Because right now, what we are having is a lot of theories out there. Then the joint task force will have its own command, and that command will be able to plan the strategy, which becomes the entry point in order to start the rejigging the architecture. But I'm glad that the countries are coming together to work. As regards Nigeria, we've always said Nigeria needs to work ahead of the curve, not coming to be reactive to people who are not even as trained and as equipped as our own military. So I think the entry point in this regard would be to set up a joint task force and have a command center where all this information will go in at this point and we launch out from there.
Is that in line with the recommendation of President Tinubu, who was represented at the summit, who recommended that, or rather proposed that the establishment of a permanent forum for African chiefs of defense staff to strengthen continental security cooperation?
Yes, that will be at the policy level. At the strategic level, we need to have a group of people who can actually do the job. And at the operational level, and to the tactical level where we carry out the real engagement on the ground. So at the policy level, you can have, like it's proposed by Mr. President, you have all the chiefs of defense staff plugged in. But for me, I've always known that the best way to approach a problem is to come together, create a platform in which everybody comes in, and then at the operational level, you decide where and how you want to deploy. And at the tactical level, you just go ahead and do the job. So I think the recommendation is in line, it's in order.
Colonel Abara, let's take a step backwards and look at the complexity of the situation we have on our hands across the continent. Yes, there might be one or two African states that may not be facing these challenges that we talk about now, but on the whole, there are many more African states that are actually faced with this very Herculean challenge. And President Tinubu did say that all along, it appears that there have been some fragmented approaches to tackling this challenge. Perhaps every country has taken it upon itself, seeing itself as an island and dealing with the challenges within their countries without as much as some level of coordination across borders. But we know that terrorism is not nation-specific now. It is worldwide and it is continent-wide.
Okay, let me step back a little and say this before I answer your question. What they are talking about is violent extremism. Violent extremism is a product of ideology. Before you start moving troops, I think this kind of warfare does not require much of troops. Go and look at what the ideology is. Identify the ideology that is creating this extremism. We have been saying this for some time. The warfare of today is no longer in the bush. It's in human terrain. It's the human body. The ideology that makes this human being an extremist, you should trace the origin. And all of them know where the origin is coming from. This violent extremism that is spreading across the Sahel is coming from somewhere. Look at Libya. The United States of America, through NATO, destroyed Libya and left Libya to who? There are two factions there, one led by Haftar and one recognized by United Nations. And from there, we have a lot of terrorists moving towards the Sahel, to different parts of the Sahel, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, other. The flow of arms, the United Nations is aware of the flow of arms coming in out of Libya. And let me just say this, as an infantry officer, most of those terrorists that are disturbing the African countries are assets to some of these advanced countries. There's what we call proxy warfare. You must understand what you are fighting before you start deploying troops. I heard that I want to deploy up to 260,000 troops. And I'm asking, where are you going to get these troops from? Is it a joke? They said their annual budget is $2.5 billion. And I look at the debt of the 12 West African ECOWAS states. The debt is huge. So where are you going to get 2.5 billion annually to fund 260,000 men? Where are you going to get them from? And I want to advise a chief of defense staff for different countries. Go and look at what the Americans did in Pan-Sahel Initiative in 2002. Go and look at what they did in 2005, the Americans. Look at what the French did in 2013 in Operation Savail, Operation Bakken, and the United Nations sent peacekeeping force, all in the Sahel. All of them failed. Now we have a coordinated approach now by ECOWAS of sending 260,000 men. From where? From Guinea-Bissau, from Cape Verde. Where are the men coming from? Interoperability, logistics. And, you know, when I looked at it as an infantry officer, I said, I don't know whether this is a proposal or a joke. It's just huge. It's unrealistic, to tell you the truth. The warfare of today has gone beyond the military. It's fought in people's minds. It's fought by proxy. There's economic warfare. There's what they call political warfare. Warfare has diversified. And we are beginning to see what AI is bringing. Africa is in trouble. For independent states to cede their lands to violent non-state actors to control, which they call ungoverned spaces, all over the country, shows that the militaries of the various African countries are not effective. For you not to protect your territory, it means you're not effective. For you not to monitor the flow of arms, the flow of fighters, the flow of terrorists into your country means failure of intelligence. So I would want to advise the chief of defense staff of various countries to go back and look at themselves and find out why there are ungoverned spaces. And let me tell the politicians equally, include them. Why would there be ungoverned spaces in your own country that are occupied by violent non-state actors? You are not supposed to cede any part of your territory to anybody. That is the law. That is the Westphalian Treaty provisions. You are a sovereign country, and your sovereignty covers your territory. So for violent non-state actors to occupy parts, and many parts of Africa, in Somalia, is Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Guinea, Sudan, name them. Even Congo, Mozambique, most of these countries are ungovernable today. Where are they coming from? Where are this ideology coming from? The flow of arms, where is it coming from? They're all traceable. The governments know. The politicians are aware. United Nations is aware of what is happening in Libya. So I think the politicians that came for this meeting should go back and think very well what to do. There's what we call political warfare, which in time to come will be able to make available some of the materials for our military to have a look at, so that we can upscale. We need to upgrade, we need to upscale, we need to upgrade our security architecture. It is not coming up at all with the threats that we have in our hands.
Colonel Abara, as far as the ECOWAS is concerned, with the 260,000 man rapid response brigade, they are hoping, or the organization is hoping, that it will be able to pull in some funds from the United Nations, which of course has promised to cover 75% of African-led peace support operations. You recall that under the under the Security Council Resolution 2719 of 2023, December 2023, the UN did promise to cover some 75% of African-led peace support operations. Do you think, given the current economic situation around the world, and with major powers like the United States pulling out of many of United Nations agencies, that this kind of fund is still there to draw on?
Well, first of all, whoever pays the piper takes the tune. I wouldn't want this force to be used by the United Nations to destabilize the Sahel. First of all, we have to, if we understand geography very well, we know that since the three countries have left ECOWAS, that is the Sahelian states have left ECOWAS, there are only 12 states of ECOWAS remaining. The 12 states of ECOWAS have no powers to move troops into these Sahel states, going except Guinea, and Mauritania has exited ECOWAS since 2000. So I don't know how they want to go into Sahel to do this kind of job. Now back to your question. If the United Nations is going to give us money, they are going to pass a resolution. I am suspecting, it's just a speculation, that if they give us that money, they will pass a resolution to use force or back the force by NATO. And if they do that, it is a replay of what happened in Libya. We have to be very careful in drawing ECOWAS into a war in the Sahel against those three states that are ruled by the military. I think most of the advanced nations are uncomfortable with the military rulership in those three countries, because if they allow it, it will affect their soft diplomacy, which is democracy. Democracy is just a soft power play of the advanced countries. And now that it has been punctured, Russia has been brought in. Turkey has been brought in Libya. Other countries are coming in. Why are they coming in? It is because of the strategic minerals in the Sahel. And let me let you know, let us not fool ourselves. The strategic minerals in the Sahel is attraction. If United Nations is going to release that money, they will back it up by force. And once that happens, it means that they will remove the governments in those areas. So the money they're promising, they didn't give it to Ukraine. I don't know how they're going to give it to Africans. 260,000 men, where are we going to draw them from? What is the strength of the Nigerian army? So some of these things are realistic, unless the 260,000 men will be augmented by foreign forces. And when that happens, is a replay of what happened in Libya, which I don't subscribe to. So the West Africa, the ECOWAS has no jurisdiction again, since those three states pulled out of, 4 states pulled out of ECOWAS. They don't have any other jurisdiction to go and fight terrorism in the Sahel. It is their business for now, unless we are going to help them if they request. But if we, through the United Nations auspices, go into the Sahel to do this, it is another replay of what happened in Libya, which I don't subscribe. Finally, I suspect that if it happens, there will be a general, there will be conflagration of wars in West Africa if it happens. So I wouldn't want, I would want the Chief of Defense Staff and heads of government to look at the proposal again. If you move in these men into the Sahel, without the permission of those three states, there'll be conflagration of wars. And Russia is there, other countries are there, and I don't know how it's going to look. But if it happens, they're not going there for African gains. They're going there to fight war. But what I want to ask, I don't need an answer. If it happens and there is war, will Nigeria say they are in a state of war? If they say they're in a state of war, will it affect their elections? There are some implications that we need to sit down and look at again. The 3 Sahelian states did not invite ECOWAS. ECOWAS is not part of them. And this budget will have conditions. Even if they're going to give you 75% of it, there must be a condition. And that condition may be a replay of what happened in Libya. And if it happens, there'll be conflagration of wars. What we are talking about now it will enter into many countries.
Okay.
So I want them to have another look at it again.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Ekwang. Dr. Ekwang, at this point in time, at this summit, there was talk of homegrown solutions to African problem, to African security issues. And one of the things that was being considered was a mechanism for integrating private sector into defense affairs. How does that sound?
Oh, thank you, Ifemari. It's always been our plan. We've advocated this for a very long time, that private organizations should be part of the security architecture. As a matter of fact, individuals at the community level should be at the forefront, the center of any defense architecture. Now, when you have your community being part of the whole, then it makes it easier for the military to do their jobs. The military can only engage when they have enough information to work with. And who best know their community than the people who live there? Now, these cells within the community could form a larger whole. If you look at a normal football, you see you have the black, the white, and even a checkerboard, you have the same, the black and the white, but they all join together to make a football. So the fragmented method of the way we engage extremism hasn't really worked for us. For me, I've always advocated that there should be a lot of players, a lot of stakeholders coming together. Let us have a common pool where everybody comes in, and the directive or the direction and the order comes from that common pool. So that is why I am saying in this West African initiative, they should have a command center. That command center is manned by people drawn from all the states that are involved. And that command center will take everything that has been decided or given out at the policy level and put it at the strategic level and design a solution. Because if there was no problem, we wouldn't want to find a solution. So all what we are doing right now, or what the defense chiefs are doing, is to find a solution. We already know there is a problem. So at the strategic level, everybody sits down and agrees on how to engage, and then draw up the operational plan. The number of troops that has been proposed may be large, but until you sit down and plan how to engage, you wouldn't really know the number of troops that you need on ground. So this is a proposal. The number of troops is a proposal. But at the strategic level, at the operational level, and then at the tactical level is when you actually know those who are going to engage. Sitting down to say, we need this amount of money to work, we need this number of troops to engage, for me, it's normally academic. At the core of the operations, you will decide what you want to do. Warfare has moved from the normal fire and our fire back. There are so many facets that is required for you to engage an enemy right now, that if we don't have a command center in all of these that they are doing, it is going to be another fragmented operation where each country will do whatever they like. Then we are going to go back to square zero, and then later on maybe we'll have another conference. But if we agree to form a task force and have a proper command center where all components will be plugged into that command center, and then a proper plan, an engagement plan will be drawn. And then we can say, oh, we have a solution. But for now, I'm happy that the countries in ECOWAS even came together to try to find a solution. I'm also happy that Nigeria is part of it and is spearheading it, because Nigeria has had tremendous experience in trying to eliminate or eradicate these terrorists. So we should be able to contribute to other countries, and the other countries will bring in their experiences. And once we sit in one place, agree on what to do, then we can engage. But for now, anything that has come out of the conference, I will say that it is theory for now, until we actually take it and go to the strategic level, the operational level. Then at the tactical level, we'll know whether our plans was actually foolproof or bulletproof, as the case may be.
Dr. Ekwang, under the AU auspices now, the current African peace and security architecture that has a standby force, they have only been able to mobilize about 5,000 standby troops. But ECOWAS, which is just a part of the AU, is talking of a 260,000 rapid deployment force. Now, given the total number or the strength of the militaries of these member countries of the ECOWAS, don't you think that 260 is rather too ambitious going forward?
Chief Obarere, I've told you before, it's just theory. I have managed troops on the ground. To put 100 men, one unit on the ground and manage them for even 1 month is a lot. So somebody to tell me they're going to manage that number of troops across countries that may not even have the money to support. Like I said, it's just theory. Now, after they go in to sit down and come up with a plan, they will actually determine the number of troops they need. Most of the things that we used to want troops to do, today, in today's warfare, drones can do those things. You can have armed drones, surveillance drones that can do the kind of things that our Reiki unit and all of that used to do before. So until somebody sets up a proper task force, a multinational or joint task force, puts people into it, sit down and design a plan, a strategy to engage. I think this is just a proposal. Let's take it for what it is, a proposal. Until we come up with that plan, and then we know exactly how many troops we will need on ground. It may not be up to that number. It may be less. Much of the monies may not need to be put into troops deployment or management. It may be put into equipment to support the operation.
All right, Colonel Abara, what's your take on that? I mean, a very ambitious 260,000 troops, given the military strength of each of the countries of the ECOWAS. How is that realizable?
That was what I was saying, that it's unrealistic. I was asking where they're going to get the men. And if they have sat down to say 260,000 men, maybe they may be augmented by foreign forces. But looking at the members of ECOWAS, the remaining 12 members of ECOWAS who have Cape Verde, who have Benin Republic, Ivory Coast, we can't be able to muster that kind of men. So I think it's unrealistic. Another thing is this extremism, like I've said, has an origin. It's propelled by an ideology. This ideology is foreign ideology. This ideology was not there in the 70s, it was not in the 80s. Where did it come from? That is where you will start from. It's not about mobilizing men. Warfare has gone beyond men. Like Dr. Ewang said, use of drones and all that. It has gone beyond soldiers. Warfare has gone beyond soldiers. It has gone beyond battlefield. Human brains are now battlefield. What you listen, what you watch, who talks to you, who you interact with. You know, okay, we are talking about Al-Qaeda. What's the history of Al-Qaeda? Al-Qaeda was started by the advanced countries because they wanted to enter, dislodge the Soviets. They rallied fighters in Afghanistan, trained them, and the list of the fighters is what the computer list of the fighters they recruited from all over the world is what they call Al-Qaeda. There is no troops on the ground called Al-Qaeda. That's the truth. You cannot go anywhere and say this is Al-Qaeda. But it's an ideology that has been established. And that ideology is franchised. Anywhere these powerful countries want to change achieve their interests, they first of all position these assets. We call them assets in the military. These are assets. They will first of all create the chaos in that place, and then there's a justification for military operations. The days of communism, they need to see communist guerrillas, then it will justify military operation. Since the end of communism, it is now terrorism. And that terrorism is fueled by an ideology. And where is that ideology coming from? It's coming from there. Look at where the origin of the ideology. Who funded the ideology? And who funds the ideology up till now?
All right.
And most of those terrorist organizations operating in the Sahel are all linked with this ideology. So that is where we will start from. It's not about the men. What are the men going to do? Some of these countries going to form these 260,000 men. How many of their national armies have defeated terrorism? How many of them? How many African countries have defeated terrorism? That you are now moving to the Sahel to go and defeat the terrorists there. The ones in your country, you have not defeated them. Sometimes it's unrealistic.
All right, thank you so much, Cornel. We have now been joined by Janice Haruna John, who is the Vice Chair of the Association of Licensed Private Security Practitioners of Nigeria in the FCT. Thank you so much. We're about rounding off our discussion, but we would like to have your time, just a few more minutes to go. We're talking about putting together a collective strategy for African security issues, which is one of the areas that the just ended Summit of African Defense Chiefs looked at. How do you think that can be brought about, given the diversity of the continent, the diverse nature of their armies and of the ideologies of the various governments and systems that run on the continent?
One of the issues that not just Africa or the ECOWAS as a subdivision will struggle, and I see it as a very, very difficult task, is the fact that even in a country, if you bring it back home, in Nigeria, we already struggle with our various differences. We have so many ethnic groups in Nigeria, and we are yet to have that collective sense of unity as a nation or identity. Even after over 60-something years of independence, that Nigerian language or message hasn't fully been incorporated or imbibed into us as a people. So how much more when you now take it out to a
continental level?
Continental level, you want to set up 260,000 force, which is also, it's not just ambitious, it's larger than, if you look at that, Nigeria is the biggest bloc in ECOWAS, and we do not even have, we can only boast about 1/5 of the of that in our military, in our current military now. So how do you go about it? Nigeria barely has about 200 to 300 police officers. How will it be funded? How will it be financed? It just seems like an Herculean task. I don't really see how it would work. But we're still trying to grapple with state policing, whether we should continue with policing at the federal level, whether policing should be done at the state level because of our differences, then trying to take that to ECOWAS. It just seems like that is not really what we need right now. We probably need to have more conversations around the ECOWAS and more collaboration between the forces, but trying to set up a structure like this, I don't believe is practical.
But looking at the outcome of the summit, or rather the issues that were discussed at this summit, and putting them side by side with the challenges that the continent currently has in terms of violent crimes and violent groups, over 1,000, as we have been told, operating across the continent, across borders, and the stunting development and stunting growth. How do you think, or what do you say should be the immediate, the low-hanging fruits that can be plucked right now from the outcome of this conference?
The most important thing that I keep saying as a professional in the industry, I say that we need to evaluate the way we practice security, and the way, it's not just about men and boots. It's not about men and boots. I think we need to go back to, Nigeria also had a national security strategy where we spoke about the involvement of women, the local communities. We need to go back to the grassroots. My Because whether we want to talk about our values and our varying ethnic divisions, our religious divisions in Africa, all of these things need to be taken back to the grassroots. And I say the security starts from the home, right? We need to go back to home safety, right? What are the value systems that each child gets from the home? What are our values from the home? Because the criminals coming in this 1,000 something groups are coming from somewhere. Someone is giving birth to these children, right? What are the value systems? What values are being preached in the churches? What values are being preached in the places of worship generally, whether it's the church, in the mosques, or traditional worship? What is our value system as a people? What is our value system as Africans? Once we can get that right, get our value systems right, then we can begin to have larger conversations about military. But you have kids today where the parents don't have control. There was, I mean, this brings to mind a child that was a 15-year-old boy that bought a Mercedes. That bought a Mercedes because his uncle had taught him the business, right? And his father sent, I mean, very kudos to that father. He sent the boy back, but the father had already lost that child because he had no control of even what his child could do, right? So meaning that there's a broken down value system in Africa where children these days don't even have parenting. And it goes even to the workplace, right? You can't call someone's parents to say, you know, I used to be a child. And there was a conversation really recently I saw on, I think it was ITV or something in the UK, where one of the speakers was speaking about the African way of bringing up a child. That if a child misbehaves, the uncle calls you to give you a dress up. Aside the father, aside the neighbors, outside there's always somebody watching you. But these days, nobody can speak to anyone's child. Nobody knows what our values are. We can't really agree on what a child should do and should not do, right? So I take it back to that it's really, really important that we revisit the fundamentals, which is what are our values as a people? What are our values as an African people, right? And this is where I also give kudos, right, to systems. And you see, America today is a bit, whatever you want to say about the current administration in the American government, there seems to be a realignment or revisiting the fundamental American values, right? Because they also lost themselves. We've all become dependent on China, and they're saying, no, we need to do some things for America. Let's make America great again.
All right, let's leave it at that, Janice. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time today. Our time is up. We must go. Retired Colonel Leo Abara, security consultant, CEO of Laven Security. Thank you so much for your time. And, of course, Dr. Ferdinand Ikwang, a counter-terrorism expert, a former national coordinator, de-radicalization project, and director, Horizon Edge. Thank you for your time. And, of course, here in the studio, Janice Haruna John, who is the vice chair of the Association of Licensed Private Security Practitioners of Nigeria, FCT chapter. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Right, that's it for us today. Thank you for investing your time with us. See you again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.